The hero's journey is an archetype that was first identified by Joseph Campbell in his text, The Hero with a Thousand Faces. Now, remember, an archetype is a typical character, an action, or a situation that seems to represent universal patterns of human nature. An archetype, also known as a universal symbol, may be a character, a theme, a symbol, or even a setting. Many literary critics are of the opinion that archetypes, which have a common and recurring representation in a particular human culture or entire human race, shape the structure and function of literary work. The hero's journey is made up of several different steps, 12 to be exact, and these are the different stages of our hero's journey. We start off with the ordinary world, and most stories ultimately take us to a world that is new and alien to its hero. But if you're going to tell a story about a fish out of his customary element, you have to first create a contrast by showing him in his mundane, ordinary world. In Witness, you see both the Amish boy and the policeman return to their ordinary worlds before they are thrust into alien worlds. The farm boy into the city, and the city cop into the unfamiliar countryside. In Star Wars, you see Luke Skywalker being bored to death as a farm boy on Tatooine before he tackles the universe. Next, we have the call to adventure. This is where the hero is presented with a problem, challenge, or adventure. Maybe the land is dying, as in King Arthur stories about the search for the Grail. Or in Star Wars, it's Princess Leia's holographic message to Obi-Wan Kenobi, who then asks Luke to join the quest. In detective stories, it's the hero being offered a new case. In romantic comedies, it could be the first sight of that special but annoying someone the hero or heroine will be pursuing or sparring with. Third stage is the refusal of the call. So the hero is reluctant at first. Often at this point, the hero balks at the threshold of adventure. After all, he or she is facing the greatest of all fears, fear of the unknown. At this point, Luke refuses Obi-Wan's call to adventure and returns to his aunt and uncle's farmhouse only to find that they've been barbecued by the Emperor's stormtroopers. Suddenly, Luke is no longer reluctant and is eager to undertake the adventure. He's now motivated. In our fourth step, the hero is encouraged by the wise old man or woman. This is the meeting with the mentor. By this time, many stories will have introduced a Merlin-like character who is the hero's mentor. In the movie Jaws, it's the crusty Robert Shaw character who knows all about sharks. In the mythology of Mary Tyler Moore, it's Lou Grant. The mentor gives advice and sometimes magical weapons. This is Obi-Wan giving Luke his father's lightsaber. And the mentor can only go so far with the hero. Eventually, the hero must face the unknown by himself. Sometimes the wise old man or woman is required to give the hero a swift kick in the pants to get the adventure going. Our fifth step is the crossing of the threshold, where the hero finally passes from the ordinary world to the special world. And the hero fully enters the special world of the story for the first time. This is the moment at which the story takes off and the adventure gets going. The balloon goes up, the romance begins, the spaceship blasts off, the wagon train gets rolling, Dorothy sets out on the yellow brick road, etc., etc. The hero is now committed to his or her journey, and there's no turning back. Our sixth stage is where our hero encounters tests and helpers, tests, allies, and enemies. The hero is forced to make allies and enemies in the special world and to pass certain tests and challenges that are part of his or her training. In Star Wars, the Cantina is the setting for the forging of an important alliance with Han Solo and the start of the important enmity with Jabba the Hutt. In Casablanca, Rick's Cafe is the setting for the alliances and enmities phase. In many westerns, it's the saloon where these relationships are tested. Our seventh step, the hero reaches the innermost cave, the approach to the inmost cave. The hero comes at last to a dangerous place, often deep underground, where the object of the quest is hidden. In Arthurian stories, the Chapel Perilous is the dangerous chamber where the seeker finds the Grail. In many myths, the hero has to descend into hell to retrieve a loved one or into a cave to fight a dragon and gain a treasure. It's Theseus going into the labyrinth to face the Minotaur. In Star Wars, it's Luke and company being sucked into the Death Star where they will rescue Princess Leia. Sometimes it's just the hero going into his or her own dream world to confront fears and overcome them. Our eighth stage is probably the biggest one. This is where the hero endures the supreme ordeal. This is the moment at which the hero touches bottom. He or she faces the possibility of death, brought to the brink in a fight with a mythical beast. For us, the audience standing outside the cave, we are waiting for the victor to emerge. It's a dark moment in any film or any story. In Star Wars, it's the harrowing moment in the bowels of the Death Star where Luke, Leia, and company are trapped inside the giant trash masher. Luke is pulled under by a tentacled monster that lives in the sewage and is held down so long that the audience begins to wonder if he's dead. In E.T., E.T. momentarily appears to die on the operating table. This is a critical moment in any story, an ordeal in which the hero appears to die and be born again. It's a major source of the magic of the hero myth. What happens is that the audience has been led to identify with the hero. We are encouraged to experience the brink of death feeling with that hero. We are temporarily depressed and worried, and then we're revived by the hero's return from death. This is the magic of any well-designed amusement park thrill ride. Space Mountain or the Great White Knuckler make the passengers feel like they're going to die, and that's the great thrill that comes with surviving a moment like that. This is also the trick of rites of passage and rites of initiation into fraternities and secret societies. The initiate is forced to taste death and experience resurrection. You're never more alive than when you think you're going to die. All right, so stage 9. Our hero has the seizing of the sword. Having survived death, beaten the dragon, slain the minotaur, the hero now takes possession of the treasure that he's gone to seek. Sometimes it's a special weapon like a magic sword, or maybe a token like a grail, or some elixir which can be used to heal the wounded land. The hero may settle a conflict with his father or with his shadowy nemesis. In The Return of the Jedi, Luke is reconciled with both as he discovers that the dying Darth Vader is his father and not such a bad guy after all. The hero may also be reconciled with a woman. Often she is the treasure he's come to win or rescue, and there's often a love scene or a sacred marriage at this point. Women in these stories, or men if the hero is female, tend to be shapeshifters. They appear to change in form or age, reflecting the confusing and constantly changing aspects of the opposite sex as seen from the hero's point of view. The hero's supreme ordeal may grant him a better understanding of women, leading to a reconciliation with the opposite sex. Next, we have the road back. The hero's not out of the woods quite yet. Some of the best chase scenes happen at this point, as the hero is pursued by the vengeful forces from whom he has stolen the elixir or treasure. This is the chase as Luke and his friends are escaping from the Death Star with Princess Leia and the plans that will bring down Darth Vader. If the hero has not yet managed to reconcile with his father or the gods, they may come raging after him at this point. This is the moonlight bicycle flight for Elliot and E.T. as they escape from Keyes, a force representing government authority. By the end of the movie, Keyes and Elliot have been reconciled, and it even looks like Keyes will end up as Elliot's stepfather. All right, next stage is resurrection. The hero emerges from the special world, so he's back to the ordinary world, and he's transformed by his or her experience. There's often a replay here of the mock death and rebirth of stage 8 as the hero once again faces death and survives. The Star Wars movies play with this theme constantly. All 3 of the films, the original trilogy, feature a final battle scene in which Luke is almost killed, appears to be dead for a moment, and then miraculously survives. He's transformed into a new being by his experience. You could even say the same thing for several of the characters in the newer trilogy. Finally, we have stage 12, which is return with the elixir. The hero has come back to the ordinary world, but the adventure would be meaningless unless he or she has brought back the elixir, treasure, or some lesson from the special world. Sometimes it's just knowledge or experience, but unless he comes back with the elixir and some boon to mankind, he's doomed to repeat the adventure until he does. Many comedies use this ending as a foolish character refuses to learn his lesson and embarks on the same folly that got him in trouble in the first place. We see that a lot in sitcoms. Sometimes the boon is treasure won on a conquest or love, or just the knowledge that the special world exists and can be survived. Sometimes it's just coming home with a good story to tell. If you think about the Lord of the Rings series, well, really, Frodo takes this ring, and the whole point is to take it and destroy it rather than to return home with it. So he returns home with knowledge, not so much a physical treasure. So the hero's inner journey is basically what's happening in the hero's mind and in his heart throughout the story. We start off with a limited awareness of the problem. So if you think in terms of Lord of the Rings, we have Frodo hanging out with his good friend Samwise, and they live in the Shire, and everything's wonderful. And then this guy comes along and all of a sudden starts saying some things, and Frodo's uncle starts acting a little bit strange. And then we have the increased awareness of need for change. So we start knowing that there's something wrong. Initially, our hero will react with some fear and resist the change, but eventually we'll overcome the fear. And sometimes this is a very brief moment where there's a bit of a question. It all depends on how brave our hero is. Finally, we have a commitment to the change, which is usually where our hero sets off on the journey. They start navigating new things, new conditions that they're in, and they are trying to figure out how to best work through those new changes. Then there is a preparation for a major change. So this could be preparation for a battle or something maybe a little bit more minor. Next, for number 8, we have the big change happen with the feeling of life and death. So maybe our character faces death right on or is experiencing a loss of a friend. Accepting the new consequences of his new life are next. After our hero goes through a major event, they are stuck then trying to figure out how to navigate this new life. The new challenge and rededication, it wouldn't be much of a hero story if there wasn't a cliffhanger, so that's why we have 3 Lord of the Rings movies, that's why we have 6 Star Wars movies, that's why so many things that you see in fantasy or see from fantasy writers today goes through so many different series. Game of Thrones is one example, The Swords of Shannara another one. Number 11 takes us to the final attempts. So these are the last-minute dangers that the hero faces on their way home. Remember, they've got all this experience now to draw from the special world that they're going back into in the ordinary world. Finally, we get to 12, which is mastery. Our main character, our hero, finally has confidence in himself or herself and is able to face new challenges or face whatever's next. Although there might be a little bit of negative change here as well, there's no way for them to go back to the original innocence that they had back here at the limited awareness of the problem. In our hero stories, we have different archetypal characters, and sometimes it takes a little bit of digging to figure out who really fits what, so I'm going to use the Harry Potter series as an example here. We start off with our hero, who is, of course, Harry Potter. He's our central figure, and he is the one who goes through the hero's journey that we have seen on the last 2 slides. The second is the shadow character, and the shadow is a villain or an enemy. Perhaps it's the enemy within that our hero is fighting on his own. It's the dark side of the force, the repressed possibilities of the hero, or his or her own potential for evil. There can be other kinds of repression, such as repressed grief, anger, frustration, or creativity that is dangerous if it doesn't have an outlet. Now, if you remember back to the earlier Harry Potter series, I think it's the first movie where they have the hat that determines where he goes. Harry doesn't want to go into the house of Slytherin, so that's obviously what our shadow, Voldemort, represents as well, and it's the thing that he fights against book after book after book. Our next character is the mentor, and you could say Harry actually has quite a few different mentors, but this is the hero's guide or guiding principle, the person who teaches him to be a good person, to make good decisions. This is the Yoda character, the Merlin character, or in this case, Dumbledore. The herald is the one who brings the call to adventure. This could be a person or an event. Hagrid is probably our best example there. Next, we have our allies, who we, of course, know are for sure Hermione and Ron Weasley. These are the characters who help the hero through the change. They're sidekicks, buddies, girlfriends who advise the hero throughout the transitions of their life or of their story. Next up, we have the Threshold Guardians, and these are the forces that stand in the way at important turning points. They could be jealous enemies like Draco Malfoy, professional gatekeepers, or people who kind of question your own fears and doubts. So Severus Snape, I think, is certainly a character who keeps Harry Potter thinking throughout all of these different films and books. Next up, we have the tricksters, and tricksters are usually responsible for a lot of comic relief. However, they also can be mischief makers. Dobby is a great example of that. He raises all kinds of problems for Harry Potter. He'd probably be much better off without Dobby around, yet there's something so endearing about him that you don't really want him to ever go away. Finally, we have our shapeshifters, and Harry Potter doesn't have great examples of shapeshifters. Classic shapeshifters would be vampires or werewolves. Of course, Professor McGonagall can turn into a cat, and the Dementors are just kind of these crazy, weird things that are around, and they seem to have an amorphous shape, although I don't believe they're shapeshifters. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. Shapeshifters represent change, and that's what you need to remember. They could be the way other people keep changing around us. There are points throughout the different stories where Harry questions the loyalties of all of his friends, all of his professors. So they are all shapeshifters in that sense. They can also represent the opposite sex or the way that people can be rather two-faced. If you take a couple minutes to think about it, take another hero story that you might know. It could be something like Lord of the Rings. It could be Beauty and the Beast. It could be, well, really any of the Disney series. You'll be able to identify these different archetypal characters, the herald, the mentor, shadow, etc.